Any gay bars around here? He slurred, leaning heavily on the counter. His breath reeked of alcohol, and his gaze was unsettlingly intense. I was working the graveyard shift at the mobile gas station. The cold wind howled through the trees, rustling the leaves and creating an eerie symphony that echoed through the desolate streets of our summer vacation hotspot. The only beacon of light in the vast darkness was the mobile gas station where I worked the graveyard shift. He walked in with an air of arrogance, his golf attire slightly disheveled, suggesting he'd had a long day on the course followed by a few too many drinks at the clubhouse. His eyes, slightly glazed, scanned the store before settling on me. There was something off about him, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The atmosphere grew thick with tension, and a shiver ran down my spine. Any gay bars around here? He slurred, leaning heavily on the counter. His breath reeked of alcohol, and his gaze was unsettlingly intense. Provincetown's your best bet, I replied cautiously, trying to maintain a professional demeanor. But it's quite a drive from here. He smirked, revealing a set of yellow teeth. How about you? Interested in some fun? I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Sorry, I don't think my girlfriend would appreciate that, I replied, attempting to defuse the situation with humor. His eyes lit up with a predatory gleam. Makes it more exciting, doesn't it? He whispered, leaning in closer. I've got a van, a real beauty. We could use the garage bay right here. I tried to focus on other tasks, hoping to divert my attention from the unease that had settled in the pit of my stomach. I immersed myself in a book, letting the words transport me to a different world, far away from the creepy encounter. But the illusion of safety was shattered when I heard the unmistakable hum of a van's engine starting up outside. Peering through the window, I saw the same van the man had boasted about earlier. He had been waiting, lurking in the shadows, watching. Time seemed to crawl, and soon it was nearing the end of my shift. The task of changing the prices on the gas station sign loomed ahead. With a heavy sigh, I grabbed the ladder and stepped out into the inky blackness. The town was eerily silent, with only the dim lights from the garage offering a semblance of comfort. I had barely ascended a few rungs when the screech of tires pierced the night. My heart leapt into my throat as the same van from earlier sped into the lot, its headlights blinding me momentarily. Panic surged through me, every fiber of my being screaming to flee. But I was vulnerable, exposed on the ladder. The van's door slammed shut, and his voice, now more menacing than before, echoed through the stillness. I forgot to pay you, he shouted, his tone dripping with malice. Confusion clouded my mind. For what? I managed to stammer, trying to maintain a facade of calm. His laughter, cold and mocking, sent chills down my spine. I forgot to try and pay you for a good time, he sneered. Frozen atop the ladder, my mind raced, searching for a way out. The cold metal beneath my fingers seemed to amplify the gravity of the situation. The man's shadow, elongated by the dim garage lights, danced menacingly on the ground below. $250, he yelled, waving a wad of cash in the air. The crisp notes seemed to flutter mockingly, a cruel reminder of the danger I was in. Summoning every ounce of courage, I shouted back. Hey man, NO means NO. The words echoed through the empty streets, a desperate plea for salvation. For a moment, there was silence. Then, his voice, dripping with frustration, pierced the night. All right, fine. The van's engine roared to life, and with a final screech of tires, he sped away, leaving me trembling on the ladder. I descended as quickly as my shaky legs would allow, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Once safely on the ground, I rushed inside, locking the door behind me. The sanctuary of the gas station, once mundane, now felt like a fortress. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Every noise, every shadow, sent me into a state of high alert. But dawn eventually broke, casting away the horrors of the night. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through the windows, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I never saw the man again, and the mobile station became a place of memories I wished to forget. But the events of that night served as a chilling reminder that danger could lurk in the most unexpected places. The summer hotspot, with its cheerful tourists and sunny days, had a dark side, and I had come face to face with it. The night was always my favorite time to drive. The roads were empty, and the world seemed to be asleep. But that night, the weight of my eyelids reminded me of the long hours I'd spent at work. Every year, I'd make this journey to my aunt's house in upstate New York for Christmas. The route was familiar, a lonely stretch near Akron, surrounded by nothing but vast expanses of rural land. The silence of the night was only broken by the hum of my car's engine and the occasional rustling of trees. As the miles rolled on, the fuel gauge's needle dipped dangerously low. I cursed under my breath, recalling my brother's assurance that he'd filled up the tank. The dimly lit dashboard seemed to mock me, its faint glow highlighting the impending emptiness of the tank. The road ahead was dark, save for the occasional glint of moonlight reflecting off the asphalt. My heart raced a little faster with each passing mile, hoping for a sign, any sign, of civilization. Just when hope seemed lost, an old, weathered sign loomed out of the darkness. "Gas off next exit," it read, its paint chipped and faded. The sign was unlike any official road sign I'd ever seen, more like a desperate plea than an advertisement. But desperation makes you do irrational things. I took the exit, the tires crunching on the gravelly path that veered off the main road. The dense woods on either side seemed to close in, their shadows dancing menacingly with every gust of wind. The deeper I drove, the more the feeling of unease grew. Every horror story I'd ever heard played out in my mind, each more terrifying than the last. But turning back wasn't an option. I needed that gas. The road, now more of a trail, finally opened up to a clearing. Bathed in the pale glow of my headlights stood a gas station, but not the salvation I had hoped for. Its structure was a testament to a time long past. Windows shattered, the paint peeled away in large chunks, and the rusted sign overhead creaked eerily in the wind. The pumps, once a beacon for weary travelers, were now gutted, standing like skeletal remains. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. The silence was oppressive, only punctuated by the soft ticking of my car's engine as it cooled. I pulled up beside the station, hoping against hope that maybe, just maybe, there was some fuel left behind. But as I stepped out, the gravel crunching underfoot seemed deafening, echoing into the night and announcing my presence. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but the reality of my situation anchored me in place. With no other option, I reached for my phone to call AAA, praying for a signal in this desolate place. As I waited for the call to connect, the wind carried a soft whisper, a melody of sorts. It was distant but growing louder, a lullaby that seemed out of place in this haunting setting. The source was indiscernible, but it was clear I wasn't alone. The whispering melody grew more distinct, morphing into a hum then a voice. My heart raced, every beat echoing in my ears. I clutched my phone tighter, the screen's glow casting an eerie light around me. The call to AAA connected, but before I could speak, a shadow moved at the edge of the gas station. "Hello?" I whispered into the phone, my voice trembling. But the operator's response was drowned out by a louder, more pressing voice. "Hey there," it called out, deep and raspy. I turned my headlights back on, and the bright beams revealed a man standing by the dilapidated store. His clothes were tattered, his face obscured by a thick beard and grime. But it was his eyes that held me captive, piercing, almost glowing, with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "Need some help?" he asked, his tone dripping with a mix of curiosity and malice. I hesitated, torn between the urge to flee and the desperate need for assistance. I ran out of gas," I stammered, trying to maintain a semblance of composure. The man chuckled, a sound that was more of a growl. "Ain't that always the way?" he mused, taking a step closer. You're not the first to come looking for gas here." As he spoke, more shadows began to emerge from the trees and the dark corners of the station. One by one, figures stepped into the light, their appearances as ragged and worn as the first man's. Their eyes, however, all shared that same eerie glow. The realization hit me. I was surrounded. The man continued, "You see, this place, it has a way of drawing folks in. And once you're here, well..." He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. My mind raced, searching for a way out. The figures were closing in, their intent clear. I had to act fast. With a surge of adrenaline, I jumped back into my car, slamming the door shut and locking it. The engine roared to life, and I floored the accelerator, tires screeching against the gravel as I sped away from the nightmarish scene. But as I glanced in the rearview mirror, the figures remained, watching, waiting, their haunting eyes glowing in the darkness. The road stretched endlessly before me, but the terror of the gas station still clung to my every thought. The fuel warning light blinked, a cruel reminder of my predicament. I drove as far as the car would allow before it finally sputtered to a stop, leaving me stranded once more, but at least away from that cursed station. The night's silence was interrupted by the distant hum of an approaching vehicle. Relief washed over me as the familiar logo of the AAA truck came into view. The driver, a middle-aged man with a kind face, quickly set to work, filling up my tank. I tried to explain the horror I'd just experienced, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I simply thanked him, my gratitude evident in my eyes. Once he left, I took a deep breath, the weight of the night's events pressing down on me. I couldn't let those figures, those entities, continue to lure unsuspecting travelers. I dialed the local sheriff's department, my voice shaking as I recounted the night's events. They promised to send someone to investigate. As I continued my journey to my aunt's house, the first rays of dawn began to break, casting away the darkness of the night. But the shadows of the past, of the gas station and its haunting occupants, would forever remain etched in my memory. Upon reaching my aunt's house, the warm glow of the lights and the familiar scent of pine offered a stark contrast to the night's horrors. I was greeted with hugs and the comforting buzz of family chatter, but the weight of my experience hung heavily over me. Late that evening, as the house settled into a quiet lull, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed an unknown number, but I answered, hoping it was the sheriff with an update. Instead, a chillingly familiar raspy voice greeted me. "You can't escape us that easily," it whispered. Panic surged through me. How had they found me? I peered out of the window, half expecting to see those glowing eyes staring back. But there was nothing. Just the quiet serenity of my aunt's backyard. The next morning, I received another call, this time from the sheriff. They had visited the gas station but found no trace of the figures I described. However, they did discover remnants of a campsite, evidence of recent inhabitants. The most unsettling part? Among the items found was a photo, old and tattered, showing the gas station in its prime. In the foreground stood a group of people, their faces eerily familiar, their eyes glowing with that same haunting light. The sheriff advised me to be cautious and to avoid traveling alone at night. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the terror of that night began to fade, becoming just another story to share around a campfire. However, every so often, when the night is still and the world is silent, I hear that raspy voice, that haunting lullaby, carried by the wind, reminding me that some roads are best left untraveled. The dense woods of Tennessee have always been a place of mystery, where tales of the supernatural and unexplained are whispered around campfires. Nestled in the heart of these woods was an old gas station, a relic from a time long past. Once, it stood proudly on a bustling highway, but progress had rendered it obsolete. A new freeway had been built, diverting traffic and leaving behind a trail of abandoned buildings. These forsaken structures, now the haunts of local druggies, stood as eerie reminders of a time gone by. On one fateful night, I found myself clocking in for the graveyard shift at 8 p.m. The dim lights of the station flickered, casting long shadows that danced with the trees outside. The silence was almost comforting, a stark contrast to the stories of the druggies who claimed the abandoned buildings as their own. Alone in the station, I relished the solitude, the freedom it offered. But that tranquility was about to be shattered. As the hours ticked by, a realization dawned upon me. We were running low on barbecue chips. With a sigh, I decided to venture into the one place I dreaded the most, the basement. Why the owner had chosen that damp, dark place for storage was beyond me. Every step I took down those creaky stairs sent shivers down my spine, the weight of the darkness pressing in on me. Then it happened. A sudden noise from the far end of the basement, like something being knocked over, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. My heart raced, every horror story I'd ever heard flashing before my eyes. Without a second thought, I bolted up the stairs, slamming and locking the door behind me. The silence of the store was now a deafening roar in my ears. Desperate for answers, I turned to the security cameras. And there he was. A man, standing in the middle of the basement, his eyes locked onto the camera, a chilling smile plastered on his face. He wasn't like the usual junkies from the area. Clean-shaven, dressed in jeans and a button-up, he looked almost normal. But that smile, that haunting, eerie smile, told a different story. My fingers trembled as I dialed the store owner's number. His initial annoyance at being woken up in the middle of the night quickly turned to concern. "Stay calm," he instructed. "Lock the main door and wait for me." I did as told, my eyes darting back to the security screen. The man was still there, his smile unwavering, his gaze piercing through the camera lens. It felt as if he was looking right at me, seeing into the depths of my soul. Minutes felt like hours. Every creak of the old building, every rustle of the wind outside, sent my heart racing. But then, as suddenly as he had appeared, the man stepped out of the camera's view. The basement was empty once more, but the weight of his presence lingered. The sound of a car pulling up broke the oppressive silence. The store owner arrived, shotgun in hand, his face etched with determination. Together, we cautiously approached the basement door. I could feel the cold emanating from the other side, a stark contrast to the warm Tennessee night. We descended the stairs, the beam from our flashlight cutting through the darkness. But there was no sign of the man. No footprints, no evidence of his presence, just a chilling emptiness. The owner tried to reassure me, suggesting it might have been a trick of the light or perhaps the result of my exhaustion. But deep down, I knew the truth. The man, with his haunting smile, was real. And he had been there, watching, waiting. As dawn approached, I clocked out, the events of the night weighing heavily on my mind. The once comforting solitude of the gas station now felt oppressive, the shadows hiding secrets I was not sure I wanted to uncover. The forgotten road of Tennessee had revealed another of its mysteries, and I was left with more questions than answers. The image of the smiling man haunted my every thought, a chilling reminder that some things are better left undiscovered. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of that night began to fade. But every time I descended into the basement, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. The gas station, once a place of solace, had become a prison of my own making. The smiling man had vanished, but his presence lingered, a ghostly reminder of the night that changed everything. Rumors began to spread in the town. Whispers of the smiling man, tales of other sightings, and stories of those who had gone missing on the forgotten road. The gas station became a place of intrigue, drawing curious visitors and thrill-seekers. But for me, it was a constant reminder of the terror I had experienced. One evening, as I was closing up, an old man approached me. His eyes held a depth of knowledge and sadness. "I've heard the stories," he began, "about the smiling man." He went on to tell me a tale from his youth, of a man who had once lived on the forgotten road, a man with a chilling smile and a dark secret. The story was eerily familiar, and as he spoke, the pieces began to fall into place. The old man's tale was a warning, a cautionary tale of the dangers that lurked on the forgotten road. The smiling man was not just a figment of my imagination but a manifestation of the road's dark past. As the old man left, he whispered, "Be careful, for the road has many secrets, and not all of them are meant to be uncovered." The gas station, the forgotten road, and the smiling man became legends in the town. But for me, they were a constant reminder of the night that changed my life forever. The road may have been forgotten by time, but its secrets remained, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to venture into the unknown.